See the facts when there was still time to end our addiction, fossil fuel addiction, dependence and future existence, inventions. Activate, advocate, organize, stand up and join the resistance. There will be a reckoning. Mother Earth is reckoning. Oh, there's no other choice. Hear our children's voice. Earth's on fire, 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 Earth's on fire, truth is in the science, no one will defy it. Fire, fire, Earth's on fire, 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 Earth's on fire, truth is in the science, no one will defy it. Storms and rising seas, drought, famines, floods could bring us to our knees. Warning, warning, sound the alarm, take action for humanity. Stop this insanity, get clarity, carbon neutrality. There will be a reckoning. Mother Earth is reckoning. There's no other choice. Earth's on fire, 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 Earth's on fire, truth is in the science, no one will defy it. Fire, fire.
ask me what my secret is, I just smile and say, follow me. I'm sitting on top of the world, on top of the world. Life's too short not to really live. I got a big heart, I can let you in. I'm sitting on top of the world, on top of the world. On top of the world. I'm sitting on top of the world, on top of the world. On top of the world. People ask me what my secret is, I just smile and say, live for today. I'm sitting on top of the world, on top of the sun came up and I gotta say, see it in a whole new way. I'm sitting on top of the world, on top of the world. Yeah. On top of the world. Yeah. I'm sitting on top of the world, on top of the world. Yeah. On top of the world. Yeah. I'm sitting on top of the world, on top of the world. People ask me what my secret is. On top of the world. I'm sitting on top of the world, on top of the world. Ask me what my secret is. On top of the world. I'm sitting on top of the world, on top of the world. Yeah, I'm sitting on top of the world, on top of the world. Yeah. Yeah, I'm sitting on top of the world, on top of the world.
Hello world, wake me up to another good morning, time to go. Got that smile upon my face, cause there's excitement in the chase, this I know. Yeah, I'm going for the ride and find myself, I am alive, and I soar. Still I run towards the wind and let the challenge draw me in, cause I want more. Oh, we are all looking for adventure. 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 Oh, wake up heart and wake up mind and see the world is yours to find. And with every passing day there's more calling you out to explore. Get up and go. There is joy found in the race, and I feel it in the place where I'm free. And I simply can't deny it, that I feel adventure calling out to me. Yeah, we are all looking for adventure. 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 We are all looking for and I'm living free, living free, living free, and I was meant to be. Living free, living free, living free, and I was meant to be. I'm living free, living free, living free, and I was meant to be free, meant to be free.
Good afternoon, Pinoy climate reality leaders and environment advocates. I am Ari Tanglao, your fellow Pinoy climate reality leader and the lead of the Youth Clusters Anti-Single Use Plastic Campaign and the youth representative to represent of our climate smart industries cluster of the Climate Reality Project Philippines. I am your host for today's episode of Klimatotohanan entitled Never Too Young to Lead, Emerging Pinoy Artists Reimagining Climate Action. Still in observance of National Arts Month, this is a continuation of our last episode where we featured renowned and multi awarded Filipino artists who have dedicated their work to elevate the environmental and climate discourse. In this episode, we will tackle how the youth and the arts could be a powerful combination to drive climate actions in our communities. But first, let me introduce my co host, my fellow Pinoy climate reality leader, Alia Laplana. She is an architecture student at the Mapua University and also considers herself as an artist from time to time. Outside the Climate Reality Project, Alia co-leads an environmental club named Go Green Program Cebu. Alia, hi, are you excited for today's episode?
Hi everyone, good afternoon. And yes, I am definitely excited for this episode too. And I'm actually excited for two things. First, I'm excited for having the chance to host this episode with you, Ari, and so Go Youth Cluster. And second, I'm very excited to hear from our panel of speakers today. So we are joined by our youth climate activists who are harnessing the regenerative power of the arts to communicate the urgency and solvability of the climate crisis. We are very lucky to have them here with us today, and we will be introducing them in a while. So hold on for a minute. Hold on for a minute. But before that, Ari, we have a few reminders. So to our viewers on Facebook, we are giving away certificates of participation. So just comment your name and where you're watching from, and don't forget to answer the feedback form, which we will be sending later in the end of the episode. So stay with us until the end to know the details of our Klimatotohanan challenge of the week and join this challenge to get a chance to win special prizes from us. Lastly, paala lang din po that you can also send us questions through the Facebook comment section, and you can comment them down anytime during the show. And our prod team will be taking those down and we will be asking them later during the open forum. On that note, Ari, I think it's time that we introduce our guest for today, don't you think? So who do we have first?
Yes, Alia, I'm honored to be introducing our first guest for today. So, Riel Diala is a visual artist and writer who shares his works on different platforms. He has been a climate reality leader since 2020, regularly contributing to the Climate Reality Project Philippines Klimartivism campaign. As a member of Renacimiento Manila, he has written various articles and published artworks regarding Manila's built heritage. As an artist, he explores different mediums for his work, including traditional and digital art, as well as origami and model making. A graduate of BS Architecture from UP Diliman, he is also an advocate for green architecture and heritage conservation, as well as built heritage and traditional Filipino architecture as an approach to sustainable design. Hello, Riel. Thank you for joining us this afternoon. In this introduction part of our webcast, we ask our guests to briefly answer our opening question for today. That is the same as the opening question episode. In your opinion, can art save the planet? So we want you all to answer the question. In your opinion, can art save the planet? So give it to you, Riel.
Hello. I hope I'm audible.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Hello, good afternoon, everyone. Is it afternoon? Yeah, it's afternoon. So, can art save the planet? Art can definitely make a difference, I believe. So, when it comes to sharing information or making information more accessible to the general public, I think art can definitely help with that. So art has been bridging the gap between necessary information for the public. So it can help as well when it comes to communicating necessary information, as well as uh, making what what's otherwise very technical data understandable, especially for everyone. Not to mention that art can also evokes emotion for people. So depende din yun from person to person. Pero yeah, um, art can definitely make a difference, and we also have to take into account then that there are also different types of artworks that can evoke certain uh certain emotions or changes for different communities. So for example, photography can expose uh, different issues realistically um, for people, especially in social media ngayon na mas accessible ang art ngayon. So mas wide ang reach when it comes to publicity materials, among others, and also mixed media. So art can also make a difference in a way how we use different materials. For example, sa mixed media, um, we can like use different kunwari different mga basura na pwede nating gawing mas we can integrate into different artworks. However, I think art cannot do it alone. So art can definitely make a difference, yes, but when it comes to changing the planet, I think um, it it goes hand in hand as well with different fields. So we have to remember then that the climate crisis is a multidisciplinary issue. So it's not just art. There's also scientists, engineers, architects, even students who can, I don't know, we can work with each other, and it's a collaborative effort actually when it comes to solving the climate crisis. So it's like art can serve in the in the climate crisis advocacy, art can art needs the science and the sciences and the other subjects as much as the other subjects need art as well. So
Yeah, I agree with that, your response. Like it's a gap, it can bridge gaps, and it can serve as a way to communicate certain things that are too difficult for like the general masses to understand if it's just like science alone, so art can definitely serve as that way to bridge the gap and to be able to communicate certain messages and information to other people. But yeah, I agree that it's a collaborative effort. It's not just art alone, but art's an important component. So yeah, thank you for your response. And moving on to our next guest is climate justice activist Mitzi Jonelle Tan. Actually, Mitzi will be joining us later, but of course, I'll still be introducing her. So, Mitzi is the convener and international spokesperson of the Youth Advocates for Climate Action, or YAKAP, which is the Fridays for Future, or FFF, of the Philippines. And she is also an organizer with FFF International and FFF Most Affected Peoples and Areas, making sure that voices from the global south are heard, amplified, and given space. So Mitzi decided to fully commit to her activism in 2017 after integrating with the Lumad indigenous leaders, which pushed her to realize that collective action and system change is what we need for a just and green society. She is committed to fight alongside toward towards a system that prioritizes people and planet and not profit. So magandang hapon to Mitzi, who will be joining us later today.
Thank you for that, Alia. And right after Mitzi, I'm so excited to have her later. No, she seems like a really, really wonderful person. Also, so I will be introducing our next guest. For now, our next guest is multidisciplinary visual artist Anina Rubio. Anina is focused on creating works that depict nature's beauty to inspire others to take better care of this planet. She is passionate about using bamboo, found objects, as well as upcycled materials to minimize waste and be sustainable when creating art. She is also a mentor and teacher, frequently hosting classes and workshops on sustainability, art, as well as breathwork sessions that can help boost focus, energy, and well being. Wow. Looks like I need some of that. So, Anina has painted murals across the Philippines and has partnered with schools, companies, and communities in promoting sustainability campaigns. Welcome to the show, Anina. Thank you for being with us today. We want to hear your thoughts. Can art save the planet?
Definitely, because as mentioned earlier, for me, art is more relatable and more appealing versus handing out like a 1,000 page um, um, content or like a book to educate someone on sustainability or conservation. But if someone sees a piece of art and automatically draws attention, then the person will have like a summary of what's going on in just one image, right? So it doesn't like for me, art isn't necessarily limited to just, for example, paintings and stuff. It could be like a photograph, it could be a video. So for me, definitely. And for me, it's also the best method to communicate certain issues, especially to the youth.
Yeah,
So
I
yes,
agree.
my answer is
I
yes.
would much rather I would much rather be handed or see a video or look at a painting than read a 100-page long
Yeah.
essay about like climate change. So yeah, I agree. It's that powerful. It can um you know make people feel that stuff for lack of better words. And so yeah, thank you for your response. And our next guest is Kathleen Lei Limayo. So Kathleen is a documentary filmmaker, documentary photographer, and visual anthropologist based here in the Philippines. She currently serves as the Asia and Pacific video producer for 350 org, which is an international climate organization. For the past 10 years, Kathleen has been documenting the impacts of climate crisis and covers stories on the intersections of environmental issues with gender, human rights, and indigenous rights too. Her documentary film, Sarikaw, a film about an Iraya Mangyan indigenous song, was nominated at the 34th Gawad Urian Film Festival under the Best Documentary Film category. So, congrats for that. In 2021, she was part of the Native Agency's International Environmental Photography Lab alongside other environmental photographers from across the globe. And this coming May, a selection of her photos will be exhibited at the Horizonte Zing's 50th Environmental Photo Exhibition, which is happening at the Baltic Sea in Germany. Wow. So good afternoon, Kathleen, and thank you so much for joining us this afternoon. And please greet our viewers and also respond to the question, can art save the planet?
Thanks for having me. Yeah, I really think that art can save the planet, not the planet, but humanity. I believe that. Since I'm a photographer and filmmaker, I always want to show the reality. It's easy to show reality visually if you have a camera with you. And it's not just that you want to show it, it's for awareness building. You give information that cannot be seen through text. You give information about the reality of the environment through the photo. And also photos and videos and art inspires people. It's not just information dissemination, but it inspires people because through art you can actually show stories. You can show what's the reality, the name of the people, who they are, what the background is, what the story is. And that evokes not just a sense of despair of the reality, but art also is able to evoke a sense of hope. So that's why I believe art can actually save us, can actually help us through the environmental crisis that you're experiencing, because it's two-edged. It informs, but at the same time it empowers.
Thank you for that, Kathleen. I definitely agree. Art can be very powerful, and just by looking at it and really appreciating it and getting to see the creativity that comes from the inspiration of the artist is very powerful. So thank you for that, and we will talk to you again in a bit. But before we proceed to the discussions, mag shoutout muna tayo to our viewers on Facebook. So shout out to Alfred Quintana from Nagcarlan, Laguna. Hello. And Patrick Diamante Sablas from Guimaras. Jude Tayaben from Baguio City. Hello, hello. We also have Monesa Salvador from Aklan and Joan Magrelos from Tawi-Tawi. We also have Christy Bule from Pangasinan, and we also have Alan Frase from Pasig City. So hello everyone. Maraming salamat sa inyo for tuning in today. If you have any questions for our speakers, please send it via the comment section of this live show so we can ask them later. So before we get to our conversations, we would like to again welcome Mitzi. She's already here. So hi, Mitzi.
Hi everyone. So sorry for being late. Nagka-emergency lang. I'm so happy to be here.
No worries. Thank you so much for being here. We really appreciate the time that you gave to be here. So we want to ask you a question. Can art save the planet?
I think at this point we need to use anything and everything that we can to save the planet. And art is definitely one of the best ways to do that because it's fun and it's exciting. And when we're fighting for a world when we're fighting against a world that's so difficult and full of injustice and full of the climate crisis, we need to be able to show the world that we're fighting for. And that world is beautiful and creative and fun and colorful. And I think that's why art is so powerful, because it helps you imagine the world that we're fighting for, imagine the better future that we want for everyone. And through art, we can tap those emotions, we can tap and get creative and reimagine life from the society that we've been stuck in for so long into one that's better for everyone.
Yes, thank you so much, Mitzi. I definitely agree with everything you said. Art is really very powerful, and it would really evoke emotions, and we really need anything and everything to save our planet. So thank you for that. I'm sure we'll dive deeper into that later. So I would want to segue into our conversations today. So they'll focus on how our youth leaders and these incredibly young activists are helping push the climate conversation forward and bring them closer to the people through the help of arts. So getting people to grasp the enormity of the climate crisis has always been a challenge, but through the years, creative storytelling, visual arts, music, and many other art forms are cutting through the consciousness of the Filipino masses to communicate the enormity of the climate crisis. The challenge now is to ensure that we maximize the arts, not just in communicating the problem, but also the solutions to climate change. Right, Alia?
Yes, I definitely agree that art can have that role in the climate crisis. And I've actually read somewhere that there are 5 key concepts that people need to understand about climate change. 1 is that scientists agree. 2, it's real. 3, it's us. 4, it's bad. But 5, there is hope. So to this day, the stories that we hear and read about the climate change or climate crisis are usually focused on the it's bad part. And I really agree on this because it's usually what I see in the media and social media, And it can't just be like that, and we can't let that keep on happening. So if we want to win the fight against climate change, we need to complete the narrative and go full circle. And yes, it's bad and it's getting worse day by day, but we can definitely still do something about it. And this is a spirit that brings us all together here this afternoon. And we want to highlight the critical role that arts and humanities have in fighting the climate change, fighting the climate crisis. So for our first segment, we will talk to our fellow climate reality leader, Riel. So I'm very excited to be here with you and for you to be here with us. And so for your first question, can you tell us the story behind some of your artworks? Because I see that you've had a number of artworks already in shared on our social media accounts. And aside from sharing about your artworks, we'd also like you to share about what issues or solutions are being tackled in them and like why you chose that maybe.
Okay, is it all right if I share my screen? I prepared a short PowerPoint for this.
Yeah, I think that you can.
Okay. Okay, I'll just share. Okay, is my slideshow visible naman?
Yes, you
Okay.
can see it.
Okay, so ayun. For me kasi art serves as an outlet for me to share my interests. So it's a way of painting, for me it's a way of painting something in a different light as to bring attention to a certain subject. So I've done this with heritage conservation like this one and this one, the San Sebastian Church and the Manila Met. And I've also done this with the climate crisis issue. So this is one example. So this is the Parex on the Pasig, and this is quite the Parex issue, which is the Pasig River Expressway. It's kind of a hot topic at the moment, and it's involving the destruction of Pasig River by literally building this large expressway over the river, which definitely is not going to help with the climate crisis because you're creating um, more heat absorbing surfaces in lieu of destroying the while destroying what's left of the wildlife and the environment in Metro Manila. And anyway, so there's that. And it's as I learned more about the climate crisis issue, all the current phenomena we've been experiencing started to make sense. So para siyang mga pieces of the puzzle that started falling together. So it's like, for example, the surrounding temperatures become noticeably hotter and hotter each day kung napapansin nyo rin yun. Every summer, mas umiinit and it's really hard to ignore, and that we don't spend much time outdoors as we used to. And for example, when the rains become stronger and stronger, that even the monsoon rains or yung habagat were strong enough to harm communities and destroy properties like a typhoon would normally. So I remember many years ago, nagkaroon ng yung habagat, kung natatandaan nyo, and I forgot what year that was, pero it was so strong that even the cities were decimated by habagat. We were flooded. We've even lost a loved one after the habagat, and it was kind of one of my inspirations in creating this work, which is entitled Dead and Dying. It's a digital artwork which I created last year. Sorry, it's not 2020, it's 2021. Pero ayun, and it's how the theme then was warming oceans, and it's important to consider that the rising temperatures of our bodies of water create stronger meteorological phenomena such as stronger monsoon rains and typhoons, which destroy communities, especially the underprivileged and the impoverished, the less privileged communities, which suffer the brunt of the climate crisis compared to the more privileged upper class people. And it doesn't help that we live in a geologically active area. And of course, hindi lang mga tao namamatay, even the wildlife, considering that their habitats are being decimated as well. So we've already been feeling the severe effects of the climate crisis in the cities, and it certainly doesn't help that our green spaces are diminishing. What about the more vulnerable areas? Sustainable design, on the other hand, I'll be speaking as an architecture graduate. It's been another subject that I've been pushing for. And one approach to green architecture is vernacular design and or built heritage. So these drawings were some sketches that I did when I made a presentation back in 2020 about connecting green architecture and built heritage, where buildings were more adaptive to the environment when we were talking about vernacular architecture, such as our bahay na bato, the bahay kubo, and our other traditional housing, like as you can see in the photo, the Maranao Torogan, the Ifugao Valley, the Bontoc Fayu, among others, and from which our heritage buildings such as the Bahay na Bato and other colonial structures were based on. So buildings were more adaptive to the environment than relying too much on systems that aren't very sustainable or practical. Not to mention adaptive reuse, which is the using of our existing heritage structures, is more sustainable than demolishing them and rebuilding new structures. So heritage itself is also experiencing the brunt of climate change. Natural and built natural and built heritage also are tangible and intangible. However, climate change does not only affect the built and the natural environment, as would later on which I have later on learned as well. This is the Zamora House, which was also another issue that we came across since it was slated for demolition a couple of years ago. Last year, sorry. So climate change also affects certainly other subjects such as food security. So this is an artwork I did in 2021 called Fissured Futures. And it's also an effect of what the rising global temperatures can do for agriculture, which can result to droughts and such. So not only is food becoming scarce during such cases, but also the communities which rely on food, as well as our farmers, which rely on agriculture to survive, are affected as well by the climate crisis. And of course, there's also human rights and politics. I'm sorry if I have to bring this up, pero we cannot deny that the climate crisis issue is also political. So these are two artworks I did as well last year: the fight for climate justice in the Philippines and coexistence against exploitation. And I wanted to bring this up then kasi there's the wrong notion that humans are a sickness to the earth. It's definitely not true. It's just another case of ecofascism. We have to consider then that the indigenous peoples have been coexisting with nature for as long as we remember. It's just that there's these large institutions and conglomerates which tend to overexploit our resources, and that's where the destruction of the environment happens. So so that's the background for the coexistence against exploitation, as well as for the fight for climate justice in the Philippines, which I also associated with with other issues which continue to persist today. For example, defend environmental defenders, which is an ongoing issue, especially when it comes to, if you're familiar with the conflicts with the the Masungi Reserve, na inaabuso ang ating mga environmental defenders by institutions which only view the destruction of our environment for profit, as well as the abuse of our indigenous people such as the Lumads in Mindanao. And I also wanted to bring up then that of all the various mediums that I use for art, I also wanted to through that I also wanted to show everyone that art can come from anywhere and anything, and that's the beauty of art. One does not need expensive materials to create, and even interesting works come from the most affordable of materials. So a light bulb for the future, I did that from a leaf. So kinat ko lang siya from using a cutter. So literal na dahon lang na pinulot ko from our garden. And also amidst the chaos, which is also my own way of of reducing trash. So lahat ng mga single use plastics na yan, those are um some waste that we generated from my birthday celebration last year, and it was horrifying to see that much waste. So it's an approach then to lessen your waste by incorporating them into artworks like this one. However, I also wanted to point out na even if you avoid using straws, um even if you use yung mga single use plastics for projects such as that, we cannot really be single use plastic free, SUP free, unless these large conglomerates institutions stop the production of of single use plastics and different materials that generate waste. And that's why, sige, nang ginawa ko yung artwork na yan, sige, pakita natin yung mga logos, yung mga pangalan ng mga products na yan. It goes to show na it's just that napipilitan lang ang mga tao, especially the underprivileged, to purchase such products kasi they're affordable, they're what's available. However, you can't really create a plastic-free society without change from those that manufacture and utilize such systems in the first place. And this is also another approach I did. I just wanted to show. I made this early this morning. Really quick work that I did. It's an origami geometric flower tower. It's not by design, pero it goes to show that even complicated forms can be generated from household materials that you can find anywhere else. This is something I made from an old calendar from 2018. So there's that. And last year, before the year ended, there was that last call for Climartivism 2021, and I wanted to create something that sort of summed up the rest of my works for that year. So I created this. It's a skull. It's entitled "The Face of Climate Change," and it's in the shape of a skull, and it's made of different implications of the climate crisis, such as forest fires, melting masses of ice, droughts, as well as polluted environments. And what really is what's really interesting is that when this was posted by Climate Reality Philippines on their Facebook page, people were thinking, akala ko Avatar: The Last Airbender, kasi mga elements ang nandyan. There's fire, water, earth, and air. So paisip ko nga pero it goes to show then gaano kalawak ang effects ng climate crisis. It's not just the waters, it's not just ang lupa, it's affecting everything. And it also goes to show that when it comes to the climate crisis, if it continues to persist and global temperatures continue to rise, damay-damay tayong lahat. It's like I said earlier, it's a multidisciplinary issue. It's not just isang sector lang ng lipunan na maapektuhan tayong lahat. And it's not only the people, it's also the wildlife as well, and the environment. So it's something that we need to address immediately. But of course, I didn't want to create something that's frightening lang. I also wanted to create something that's positive, something that inspires hope. And for example, these two artworks, The Colors of the Heart and She Stands Her Ground, these were two artworks that I created for as some sort of tribute to our climate justice advocates and environmental defenders, especially those that are members of the LGBTQIA plus and women who continue to stand for what is right for climate justice despite the pressures that are brought on by this patriarchal society. And of course, art not just it's not just to frighten, but it's also to give hope as well. Na it's not just a way to give hope na as long as we continue to work, as we continue to work with each other, it's sure na uh as I said earlier, it's a multidisciplinary issue as long and it's also a multidisciplinary solution. Everyone has a part to play in the climate justice advocacy, and it's to solve the climate crisis is definitely not a far-fetched goal as long as everyone gets to coordinate with each other. We get to play our role. It's not just the professionals, it's also the students. It's also the non-professionals, those who are well whether specialized or not. It's everyone has a role to play in the climate crisis issue to to solve the climate justice and for the climate justice advocacy. So I think that's my last slide. So ayun lang. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing all of that with us, Riel. And I can clearly see that you're such a versatile artist and really, I'd say even like prolific because you cover so many different topics and themes, and you don't just focus into one aspect of the climate crisis. So I really enjoyed seeing that all of that, like your portfolio. And I guess that's why you've been, generous with your art submissions in climate realities, climartivism, right? And I'm sure that you've touched and inspired so many people through your submissions, including myself. And we hope to provide you in the future with more platforms to share other climate related artworks. And all right, before I turn this over to Ari, I just want to remind you guys, our audience, that you can type in your questions in our comment section below, and our speakers will be answering those later during our open forum. So Ari, who do we have next?
Thank you, Alia. So in the next segment, we will talk to Mitzi about the work that they do at Young Advocates for Climate Action Philippines, or YACAP. As mentioned earlier, their group is the Philippine counterpart of Fridays for Future, the global youth movement founded by Greta Thunberg. Wow, that is actually so amazing. So, hi, Mitzi. Can you tell us about your work at YACAP?
Hi
Yes,
everyone.
hi. I also wanted to add, how is YACAP using different forms of art to mobilize young people for climate action?
So a lot of the work that YACAP does revolves around raising climate awareness in different levels. So that's either through the youth and empowering youth with knowledge, and that means a lot of our work involves going to schools. Well, before the pandemic, going to schools, giving talks, going to rooms and talking to students and inviting them to talk after class for a deeper discussion on the climate crisis. But that also means that we also go to communities such as urban poor communities and small farmers and small fisher folk to learn from them about the climate crisis and how they're seeing it play out in their environment, because they're the ones who are seeing it the most, because they're the ones who live in these areas. But then also to augment that knowledge with terms like climate science and carbon dioxide emissions, and empowering them to know that there is something that we can do about it. And the way that we use art is during our protests, we always make sure that it's really creative and colorful and visually attractive, because it's the way that you reach people. It's the way that you get people to understand what you're fighting for and catch people's attention. It's also the way to express yourselves. We also translated this when everything moved online. We did a lot of digital artivism and that's the word, and creative activism that way. And now we're also developing comics that help help explain the climate crisis in a much more Filipino setting. That way, it's a lot more understandable for our communities. We're also developing creative videos and things like that to really make sure that people understand and learn about the climate crisis the way that's best for them. Because, you know, the climate science graphs and the reports are not very accessible to people, honestly. Like, I have a math degree and I can speak English and I have access to the internet, and I still hate reading all the intergovernmental panel on climate change reports, right? Like, it's all these big words and all these numbers and all these graphs. So we're breaking this down into something that's empowering, that people can understand. That way it can pique their interest, then they can go to the, you know, more difficult stuff when they're already interested. But honestly, we've seen such a rise in, you know, this artivism lately, especially with the climate crisis, and I think it's so important. When I was starting out as a climate activist, I remember that I had to comb through so many difficult words and graphs, and now I'm seeing it easily accessible on Instagram, and I think it's so important that we do that, so that more people are reached, and so that we can have more climate activists. We can have more people in this movement.
Right. Thank you so much for that, Mitzi. And I definitely agree. It's so much more digestible when we like put out information as art instead of like these really really long pages or like these papers. So, and it's really nice that you're able to have an empathetic lens for art, so when you go to communities, so that's really so amazing. I would also like to ask, what role does art play in your work as a climate justice activist?
As I mentioned earlier, I think it's so important that we show people the world that we're fighting for. So if that's,
Yeah.
and a lot of that is through art, right? It's a lot of it is
Yeah.
through showing them that, you know, activists aren't scary, especially in the Philippines, where activism is so often associated with terrorism. And so a lot of young people feel like, oh, if I become an activist, it's scary, it's dangerous. But we
Yes.
should show them that it's not that dangerous, and you can do fun things through your art. Honestly, I use art in my activism because it calms me down more than it being a vehicle for my
Yeah.
activism. It's also a vehicle for my expression and for me to deal with my climate anxiety, and parang bonus na lang na nagagamit ko rin siya for activism. It's so important we're able to show people what the world we're fighting for is. So if that's through creative writing, if that's through, you know, paintings, if that's through videos, if that's through whatever it is, photography, I think that's the way that we can help people reimagine the system that we're in. And we need a lot of creativity to do that, because we've been stuck in this profit-oriented system for so long that sometimes people feel like this is it. Ito na yun, wala na tayong choice. We're stuck here. But let's help people be creative, that we can get out of this. Because if we can create these beautiful moments of art, these beautiful moments of joy and laughter and music together, then we can create a world that's worth fighting for.
Yes, that's so true. And I agree with what you said. You said activism can be actually quite intimidating. I remember before, like I wasn't really like inclined to join any sort of activism because it's scary in the Philippines. Like we think there's a lot of stigma around it, but I guess through art it makes it more accessible, and we realize that wow, this is actually very impactful, and it's way more appealing to everyone, and it's so nice to hear that it relaxes you also and it calms you down. So that's a great bonus. I would also like to ask what makes youth activism and the arts a potent combination for driving climate action in our communities?
I think it's important because young people are really creative. I love how there's so many memes around. Memes count as art
Yeah.
naman, di ba? Yes, I will say yes.
Yes, yes.
I think that being able to use TikTok and memes and you know, popular media is the way to reach people, because that's how you, honestly, I would not want to read. Like, if you give me like a long statement and there's nothing there, I'm not gonna read it. But if it's fun to read, it's creative to read, and it doesn't always have to be happy, but it moves you. And I think that's perfect. And I think young people have that creativity and have that, like, pakulo in their minds, like all the TikTok
Yeah.
POVs. I love them so much. And if we had more climate TikTok POVs, like imagine how we can tap into that potential really, and combining art and young people together. Like even outside of climate activism, we've seen how so many young artists have done so much good work. We've seen how, you know, young artists have inspired like revolutions and movements and stuff. And
Yes.
so having that with climate activism, I think is so important because that's the next step.
Yes, that's so true. And it's really like a challenge, right? Like it's a challenge to young people to get their creative juices out and really express themselves through art. And it's really great to see everyone creating and creating. So I hope you're able to create more and keep sharing it with the world. So thank you so much, Mitzi, for that. And I really, really enjoyed what you said. And I've actually learned a lot in just these few minutes. So thank you so much. And your inspiring leadership at Yakap inspires a lot of young Filipinos to claim their space in the climate movement. So, Mitzi, we look forward to hearing from you again later during our open forum. I hope you can stay with us. But at this point, we have a few reminders from the Climate Reality Project Philippines and its partners.
So for our reminders for today, the Climate Reality Project is inviting you guys to the fourth installment of our Klima Pandayan workshop series, which is entitled Keeping It Real, How to Combat Fake News and Disinformation. This virtual workshop will tackle disinformation, fact-checking methodologies, and platforms, and the importance of discernment in the 2022 elections. In addition to this, the workshop will also discuss climate change misinformation and tips on how readers can catch climate change lies. So tune in to our Facebook page to know how you can register. And sa ating mga audience, gusto rin po namin i-share sa inyo ang mga initiatives at event ng ilan sa ating mga advocacy partners at sa ating Klimatotohanan webcast. Sa ating mga viewers mula sa gitnang Luzon, narito ang ilang paalala mula sa CLTV 36 na isa sa ating mga official media partners.
Inaanyayahan naman tayo ng Earth UST para sa kanilang Environmental Summit for Youth Action. This is a 2-day event organized by Earth UST, the premier environmental organization of the University of Santo Tomas, wherein delegates and environmentalists from different universities and colleges gather to become an avenue for the youth in the promotion of environmental awareness. Abangan po natin ang announcement mula sa Earth UST sa kanilang Facebook page. We are also happy to share that the Climate Reality Project is supporting the Youth Climate Agenda 2022, spearheaded by one of our Klimatotohanan partners, Youth Advocates for Climate Action Philippines, or YAKAP. Malapit na ang May 2022 national elections. As the climate crisis continues to worsen, we need leaders who will take on the challenge of pushing for a sustainable, people and planet-centered Philippines for current and future generations of Filipinos. The Youth Climate Agenda 2022 serves as a challenge to our candidates to put just and green leadership at the heart of their campaigns. To learn more about this, visit YAKAP's Facebook page at facebook.com/YAKAPphilippines. Alia, over to you.
Take full advantage of the power of TV and digital media when you advertise with CLTV. Through CLTV, you can now have your very own TV commercial for your business at a reasonable cost. And not only is your business authenticated by a reliable and trusted TV station, you can also reach our captive audience through CLTV's various digital media platforms at the same time. Contact us to avail of these exciting advertising opportunities.
So I guess that was short video about CLTV. So you may contact them if you want to have your advertisements. And so moving on, we are calling all climate advocates, writers, and poets to join When Is Now, a global creative collaboration for urgent climate action. Organized by the Agam Agenda, Climate Vulnerable Forum, and Institute for Climate and Sustainable Cities, When Is Now is an open, evolving call for creative expression and collaboration to demand for urgent climate action. All you need is a seed of an idea, a string of words, and your willingness to share your experience as well as acknowledge and respond to other others' experiences of the climate crisis. So to learn more about this initiative and how you can submit your poems and seeds of creative climate action in many different forms, you can visit whenisnow.org, which is on the screen. So yeah, whenisnow.org. And altogether, Agam Agenda will be interweaving the lines of poetry into a web that stretches across the planet, asking when and demanding now. On to you now, Ari.
We would also like to invite everyone to order your copy of Harvest Moon, Poems and Stories from the Edge of the Climate Crisis. Harvest Moon is an anthology of loves and lives of stories that thrive at the borders and edges. The book features over 50 award-winning and emerging writers, photographers, and artists across Africa, Asia, the Pacific, and Latin America. In keeping with the vision of a beautiful yet accessible book for diverse readers, the Agam Agenda and Institute for Climate and Sustainable Cities are offering this limited Philippine edition at a significantly marked down price. Wow! So order yours now at the link flashed on your screen.
Wow, that sounds like a very good deal, and I would be excited to order my own copy of Harvest Moon as well. And I encourage you guys, our viewers, to do so. But before doing that, just take down the link or the website. Let's now proceed to the next segment of the show. In this segment, we will learn more about Anina's journey on merging her passion for the arts and sustainability. Hi, Anina. I'm excited to know more about your work and hopefully see some of it as well. So, could you share with us how did you become the multidisciplinary visual artist that you are today, and how are you using the arts, I guess, for your environmental advocacy?
Okay, so let me start sharing my screen, give you guys a background on what I have been doing for the last few years. So sometimes there's a misconception, like when people hear the word sustainability, they feel like it's too scary because like, oh, I'm not a scientist, I'm not an environmental lawyer, I didn't study this, I didn't study that. So for the last few years, I've been focusing primarily on bridging that gap between sustainability and art. So I was already introduced earlier, but I just want to give you guys an idea on what I do. So for the last 3 years, I started teaching K-12 visual art students on how they can do or merge sustainability and art at the same time. And I've been teaching a lot of classes on art and wellness, so yoga and breath work. I also paint murals. I collaborate with brands for design. Basically, as an artist, I feel that I just want to be able to create things using my hands, and at the same time, make or create designs that are inspired by nature for nature. So if you think about it, most of our modern day products are actually patterned from the things that we see in nature, like the Shinkansen train. It's designed to mimic the kingfisher's beak, or our light bulbs to mimic fireflies. So if you think about it, nature has an important role on the things that we use. So it's our responsibility as human beings to ensure that when we create something, it's in line with nature. Like we don't necessarily harm nature because again we only have one planet. So if we keep destroying this planet, then all of us are directly affected. So why I do what I do, I didn't study any environmental laws growing up, but it was when I was directly impacted by this whole environmental pollution thing. Because I feel that when people aren't directly affected by things that are happening, they don't care. And that was me for a long time until I started to learn how to swim. And this was just maybe 7 years ago. I grew up being afraid of the ocean. So when I started to train myself to swim, I was very disappointed to see more garbage than fish. And it made me realize that I was actually one of the contributors of this garbage that we see on the ocean, because we don't really think about our long-term impact because we purchase things, we use things because they are convenient. So growing up, I was using straws, of course, there are diapers, but it's very like sad to see that when you swim, there's always floating debris of garbage, or even just on the shore, there's always garbage. And I normally um, live in Batangas near the coastal area, or here in Manila. But whenever I'm in Batangas, every day I go to the beach to clean it up. But the following day, there's still trash. So it's endless. So it's very depressing, but it's the reality. And if you think about it again, we are the contributors of this garbage. It's not just because they littered, or the neighbors or the communities are the ones littering. No, it's all of us. All of us who have drank from a plastic water bottle, or all of us who probably ate a pack of crackers, a pack of chips, used a straw. It's us who did this to the planet. So for every action, there is an equal and opposite reaction. So one of Newton's laws. And again, if you think about it, we're not directly affected because we're unaware, or if we're living comfortably in our homes, we don't really realize the effect of all of our actions. So that plastic bottle that you probably purchased maybe 50 years, or no, not 50 years ago, you guys weren't born yet, maybe 5 years ago at least, eventually breaks out into microplastics. The fish unconsciously would, or accidentally would, eat it. The fish will like grow bigger, we eat the fish. So in the end, it goes back to us. I'm not trying to scare you guys, but this is the cycle of things, and it's really happening. So I had to do something about it. But of course, I know I already finished studying, and I was like maybe post quarter life crisis. I didn't know what to do, and I was trying to transition into the arts during that time. So actually, I'm very honored to be part of this youth show. But I think my age has went beyond youth. But in any case, I figured I had to do something about it within my means. I mean, if you have the luxury and the time to study environmental law again, or become a marine biologist or something, go ahead. But during that time when my eyes were being open to different issues, I figured, what can I do within my means? So I started paying more attention, or doing more research, educating myself, because I mean, we live in an internet world wherein information is accessible, but you just need to fact check. So during this time, I wasn't a full-time artist yet, and I wasn't really. I was just slowly starting to learn about like drawing and illustration. So I actually finished electronics and communications engineering, and being an artist was never in my track growing up. So this was like one of my first few like artworks, in terms like trying to raise awareness. It's World Oceans Day. What are the issues that we can deal with, or why we should promote World Oceans Day? So slowly, and then eventually, I started paying more attention to tapping more the community, especially the younger generation, because they're the ones who will inherit this planet. And if you work with them or you partner with them, they have a sense of accountability and ownership. So, for example, we painted this wall that says protect the oceans, or it was in Tagalog, like alagaan ang kalikasan at ang karagatan para sa kinabukasan. So, when these kids or when these children painted it, they have a sense of ownership and they want to protect the wall and they want to like keep preserving their community, because again, if you keep polluting or if you're not aware of these issues, then you will just keep doing the things that you do, and then eventually it will come back to you. I mean, who would want to live in a house full of garbage, right? So here, I also tried to work with different organizations. So this was during Shark Summit in Tagbilaran. So again, as much as possible, you want to tap the community. So the local artists in Tagbilaran actually helped me paint this. So we wanted to, again, raise awareness on, shark poaching and how, destroying or like catching these top predators would affect the whole marine ecosystem. Because a lot of people think, it's okay, it's sharks, they are like enemies because of how they are portrayed in certain movies. But sharks aren't just limited to like the sharks that you see in the movie Jaws. It's actually like whale shark, we have mantas, and in the Philippines we have over 200 species. So imagine, this country is super rich with like different species, and it's very, very important that we protect, because each animal or creature plays an important role in, again, the whole ecosystem. So again, we're always trying to use art to promote sustainable tourism or protecting the sharks, because it's easier, it's relatable, it's fun, and you can give the community a sense of ownership if they help paint a wall that's in their area. So this one is my mural for along Pasig River. Basically, I wanted to tell everyone that the future is in our hands, or it's in your hands. Whatever you do now will affect directly your future. So if you just disregard all of the issues, then maybe a few years from now you would be swimming in a garbage of ocean. So my advocacy to bridge the gap between art and sustainability isn't just limited to painting murals. So this one I illustrated 5 native flora that were now, or actually it's now released. It's in partnership with My Little Smarts. So it's an educational tool or playing card deck that you can teach the young ones, like 6 years old above, about the different endemic and native species that we have here in the Philippines. And a lot of these species are actually threatened, critically endangered, or vulnerable. And it's very important, again, to raise awareness, because I feel like these things aren't necessarily taught in school, but at least with these like powerful educational tools. So not only you can use art through to promote conservation, but also you can use art to educate. And also, so this one, it's not necessarily related to conservation, but this one is just an example on how you can create a fun and educational tool to raise awareness. So this one was in partnership with international, I forgot the thing, but it's ICRC, the Red Cross, International Committee of the Red Cross, to promote equal access for vaccines. So again, you can use art to create powerful tools of communication, and at the same time, you are also highlighting important species that we need to protect here in the Philippines. So like the Negros bleeding heart, waling waling, and we also have the Rafflesia. So again, through art, I want to give a visual on important species that are soon to be forgotten, because these aren't really taught in school. But if you use art to visually stimulate, then it could help raise awareness. Because like if people look at it, oh, what's this species, and then they will search it. Again, we live in an internet world wherein you can easily search or Google, which is very, very useful. But again, please, please, please fact check first. So now, what I want to promote is how you can create art with what's available. So as I think it was Riel who mentioned that you don't need fancy tools to be able to create something. Correct ba, si Riel Peña? I think it was him. So it's important also for us to practice resourcefulness, or to rethink our resources, because, again, there's no more excuse to not pay attention or to not care. And again, through art, we can convey important messages in conservation, environmental issues, just by creating something that's more fun and more useful. And at the same time, I want to promote circularity in terms of creating art. So as artists or as creatives, it's also important to think outside the box. Again, you don't actually need to be like a formal or professional artist to create something. Anybody has, or everybody has, the power to create. And I believe that if you just look around you, you will be able, and use your imagination, you will be able to create something. So this one was an installation I did for Malasimbo Festival, using plastic bottles or like found objects that we found in or collected in Puerto Galera area. And when I went to Bamboo U in 2020, so to study bamboo architecture, and of course, bamboo is one of the most sustainable building materials. And I want to also use that as my medium. So I took inspiration from nature during one of my walks in camp, because coming there, I honestly didn't know what my final output should be. So I was jumping from building the yurt, building a kubu, and then doing furniture design. But during one of my walks, I just took photos of these. So it's a first of obviously it's bamboo, and then the other one is like dried coconut leaves. And from this, I created my own bench that mimics or takes inspiration from the shape of the things that I saw around the premises. And again, bamboo is one of the most sustainable building materials. So as an artist, I've always been fascinated with that. My bike is also made out of bamboo. And what I'll be showing you guys is my textile artwork that I have been doing since 2019. So I also wanted to cut down on using paint. So I decided to use scrap fabrics, as my paint for most of the artworks that I create, except for murals. But because I had an immersion with Fashion Revolution as well, and because of that immersion, I was like, I honestly didn't know the impact of fashion on the environment. But after that immersion, I figured, okay, sustainability and conservation, it's not just limited to plastics, to single-use plastics. It's in everything that we do. So fashion is one of the top contributors of marine pollution. So I figured I had to do something about it. So I collect fabrics I just wanted to show you my dog is cute. I collect fabrics from local fabric factories here in the Philippines, and I try to, of course, I sort them, I wash them, and eventually I convert them into my textile artwork that I now call as kaha. So at least in my own way, I'm also doing something about, bridging the gap between, again, art and sustainability, and trying to convert trash into something more purposeful and beautiful. Because again, there's a misconception, it's like art from trash, it looks like trash, but actually, if you just, again, use your imagination, the possibilities are always endless. So here I did an installation called Agua Caja, again, to raise awareness on marine fashion's impact on our marine ecosystem. I wanted people to know. So I was trying to mimic the coral bleaching phenomenon. That's why there are a lot of white fabrics on the side. And I wanted to put a mirror so that people see that, look, change doesn't have to be grand all the time. Like we don't have to limit ourselves. I can't save the planet. I can't do this. I can't do that. But honestly, it's just in small acts of kindness towards the planet that will create a big impact, because when all of us collectively do the same thing, then the impact is greater. So again, change begins with each and every one of us. So we just need to, continue educating ourselves, because it's like we don't need, again, to finish certain degrees on environmental law just to prove that we can save the planet. Even just by creating art or sharing useful information on social media, that's also in itself helping spread the word and raise awareness. So again, I've been studying also circular economy and building sustainable businesses that are in line with the United Nations Sustainability Development Goals. So with the art that I'm creating now, it's called Kaha in Every Casa, because as much as possible, I want a lot of people to bring this sustainable piece of art in their homes. So again, my process is we collect scraps, and whatever we don't use, it is donated. So it could be rugs or pillow stuffings or stuffed toy stuffings. And then we use bamboo. So I partnered with a social enterprise that builds bamboo bikes, so Bam Bike. And whatever is not used for the bikes, it is used for my kaha frames, or whatever's not used, it becomes compost pile. And then we also help livelihood. So as of the moment, before I was doing everything and sewing everything by myself, but now I'm employing 5 women in the community to help me stitch all of the individual pieces, and then I'm the one who assembles it on the frame. So at least in my own little way, I'm trying to help or generate livelihood as well, especially during the pandemic, when most of these women were dependent on fishing or tourism. But because of everything, like it's open, the business is open, the businesses are closed, so at least they have a side hustle. And again, because I want to bring this sustainable piece of art worldwide. Now we have kahas in UK, Singapore, Hong Kong, Paris, US, and of course here in the Philippines. Super important. So again, it's super, super, super easy to create something purposeful. So as artists, or as creatives, or if anyone is interested, I want to encourage each and every one of you to start, just looking at resources that you have at home and see how you can help participate or help raise awareness, help save the planet through art by just creating something fun and visually appealing and educational. So these are the outputs of my students. So we try to create portraits of animals that are endangered or again threatened. So we have the Philippine Tamara, we have the sea turtle, we have Philippine eagle. So again, this is using like packaging. I'm sure a lot of you guys have been online shopping. So my student created like an anatomy or a Philippine eagle portrait using upside of the packaging from the online shops, and then iPad cover, beads, buttons. So again, more plants, less plastic. Empower yourselves and take part in this role in saving the planet in your own little way. Small acts can make an ocean of change. And you don't you if you can't start an environmental initiative, join one, sign petitions, vote for officials who are pro people, pro planet. If you're setting up a business, go for circularity, use your knowledge, resources. All of us, we are in this together, and this will probably give away my age, but there is a show called Captain Planet which inspired me when I was young. He would always say the power is yours. So that's it. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you for that presentation. I was so in awe the whole time I was watching, and I was just like, wow, like I really enjoyed seeing the art and all your work, and it's so nice to see how you were you didn't stick to one thing, and you were just taking and drawing inspiration from your different experiences, and um that really helped develop your art and everything that you've produced. So, quickly lang, I'm also interested in asking, you've harnessed the power of collaboration with schools, companies, and even like communities in promoting sustainability campaigns. And so, tell us about your experience of tell us about your experience, and like how important is collaboration in advancing sustainability, especially through arts.
So for me, it's when you're trying to promote conservation, especially in a specific area, super important that you tap the local community because they're the ones who are, residents who are directly affected by that. So you can't, for example, we are actually where I stay in the province, we're actually trying to push for the air to become a marine protected area, and to help build a sustainable tourism platform for the banquers or the ones who does the balsa tourism. But it's really really difficult because you can't just go there and say, you can't do this, stop using plastic bottles or stop using sachets, when again it's actually, for me, it's like a capitalist mindset because these people don't necessarily have access to purchasing big bulks of containers of soap. That's why they stick to the sachet, because their budget is probably limited. But if you help educate them, then they can come then you can come up with a solution together with them. So, and also again, if you tap the youth. So actually, most Sundays, we work with the varsitarian youth to like do the coastal cleanup, although that's only surface level. That's why you need to educate them more so that it doesn't become like, it's okay, we'll just clean it up today, because you always need to find the root cause. And we're going to be painting a mural in the basketball court and one of the walkway walls there. And again, if you use art, then it's more relatable, it's easier to understand, especially for like older people, and not being discriminatory about this, but sometimes because it's the way that they have lived their lives, it's so hard to change a habit. So you can't tell the fisherman, don't anchor here, you're destroying the corals, when for the last 30-50 years that's what they've been doing, right? But you have to again slowly and work together with them. Super super important, because again, we're not messiahs, we're not necessarily like, you can't come in there and say, it's okay, do this. Again, it's really about partnership. We are all in this together. So
Yeah,
that's
I agree. Like you can't just go in there and say do this, do that, because you need to, I guess, like establish yourself among them and like build that partnership, build that um I guess like yeah, relationship with them, and like
yeah.
build rapport and like credibility among them for them to hear you out and like trust you.
And
And
you
from
need to
there, like
involve them.
yeah, they have to be involved, like having that sense of like ownership. I think like you mentioned that a while ago, that's a really important factor, because like having that sense of ownership, they feel more like that sense of responsibility
Yeah.
like in their action. And I think when you have this sense of excuse me, when you have this sense of ownership, you're more inclined to take part and be involved in it. So yeah,
Yes,
thank you.
exactly. Thank you,
Thank you for
Anna.
that. And so yeah, we'll get back to you later. And Ari, you are up.
Yes, thank you, Alia and Anina. That was really, really amazing and inspiring. Wow, that was, yeah, like Alia said, I was really, really so amazed with everything that I saw. And up next is our conversation with documentary filmmaker and photographer Kathleen. Kathleen, hi again. Kathleen. Oh, I think Kathleen. All right, there we go. She should be here in a few seconds. There we go. Hi, Kathleen.
Hi everyone. I have to keep my camera off because the internet connection in Tacloban is really, really bad right now.
All right, no worries. No worries. So, Kathleen, you have a decade of experience in documenting stories of climate change and its interaction with gender, human rights, and indigenous rights. So, could you please tell us the story behind your work, such as your short film entitled Sarikaw and documentary Alaot, People of the Sea, Climate Change Impacts to the People of Tigtabon Island? So, what issues are tackled in these films?
Yeah, for the first Sarikaw, I did the documentary as part of as my thesis for my undergrad when I was in Film Institute in UP Diliman. And it is a story about a community who no longer uses their indigenous language. And what's the impact of being, instead of living in their ancestral land, which is uphill, they've relocated to near the highway because of for livelihood also. And I guess it's more of a cultural documentary. But when I started doing documentaries, that was the first documentary I did, and I fell in love with learning about indigenous communities. And for the past 10 years, that's what I did. I went from different indigenous communities across the Philippines, and I've traveled across the Philippines from Luzon to Mindanao. And together with that, what opened my mind with with my immersion with indigenous communities, with learning their language and their culture, was that a lot of a lot of the cultural issues, or a lot of their issues, are actually related with the environment. And even cultural expressions are actually affected by environmental issues. So, for example, if there is a strong typhoon, communities would be affected by, I guess, um, landslide, and their crops would be damaged, and in a way affects their livelihood, and that jeopardizes their livelihood and sustainability for communities and families. And um, and so um, when I was doing documentaries, that's what I learned. I would go into communities. A majority of the indigenous communities would be living in their ancestral lands, and also the issue of their ancestral lands are always something that they have to fight for. Even if we do have IPRA, it's indigenous communities would have to fight for their ancestral lands. And these are ancestral lands that are forests, for example, the Sierra Madre, the mountains, the fields, which which are always in danger of environmental destruction, say from large scale mining, from large scale like dam construction and all of these things. And it's not just an issue for indigenous communities and the local community, but this is an issue in large scale. It's a national issue. It's a regional issue, and it's even a global issue, because how we treat in ancestral lands and how we see lands as something that is disposable would reflect the kind of earth we want to live in. And the more I immersed the communities, the more I did the research, and the more I took photos and videos of indigenous communities and in environment, the more I realized that that whatever the trajectory of humanity would actually be in the hands of humans, and it is a question of and whether want to propel humanity towards a bright future, or we want to destroy Earth. So I guess that's the background of how I got into environmental photography, how I got into environmental filmmaking. It's because I saw the devastation of the environment, and I saw how you relate to the environment. I do have actually a slide deck that I prepared, that I can go through specific photos that actually shows climate impacts here in the Philippines. I'm just gonna share
Yes,
my
please share it with us.
yeah.
We'd love to see.
Yeah, so I prepared the slide deck for this session, and it's just visual storytelling for climate action. This particular photo, I took this in Dingalan in Aurora, and particularly it was a photo of a Dumagat cultural festival. But during the time, this you can still see the look of the shore, but because of the typhoon that happened in 2019, in 2020, the shoreline is no longer there. Like it was actually it got eroded, and the houses actually got washed, and it was the community along the shore within the Ningalan Aurora actually got had there was a storm surge because of that typhoon. So how did I got into this? When I think about visual storytelling, I think about pulling people to curiosity. Like when you show photos, when I take videos, I try to I try to show people what's there and what's not there. And when I took this photo, people wouldn't know what it is, and you can see how small the people are. These are from the Aita community, elders from Aita community, and that's how small they are. And this is actually the destruction inside the New Clark City, which we documented, which I documented with two journalists from Philippine Daily Inquirer. And you'd never really realize that's a part of a mountain that is part of an ancestral land, and you'd never know how big the devastation is until you see how small the people are compared to the landscape. And that photo is just part of this landscape that actually got it's mountains that were leveled just for a golf course in New Clark City. And this is still in contention because this land has been inhabited by Aita indigenous community. And when we think about environmental issues, we don't just see local issues, we see national issues, we see international issues with that, because whatever's happening locally affects everyone. And that's why what propels me towards documenting more photos, environmental photos, is that we need to visualize the impacts of the climate crisis. And when people see it through their eyes, they would believe it. And documenting and taking photos and visual storytelling highlights the voices of frontline communities. It's very important that when we tell stories of environmental destruction, and even empowerment, it centers and highlights the people who are the most affected. It's easy for us to see it in environmental issues in large scale. When you say the climate crisis, can we even get to the 1.5 degrees of warm? It's when you see the issue on large scale, we always forget that there are people who are most impacted by the crisis, the climate crisis. And also, when we visualize the climate crisis, we try to reimagine a future that's centered on justice. And that's what photos and videos do, with communities empowered to fight environmental degradation. And that's actually very important. I think there's a lot of narrative about how doomed we are. And especially the IPCC report on impacts and mitigation will be released this March, and this feminist March. And there's gonna be again a lot of narrative in media and in social media about how doomed we are going to be. And the numbers are correct, or the scientists are correct with all of those data. But if we stop just on telling that this is how doomed we are, and this is what are the impacts are, but we don't see and reimagine the future, then we cannot propel towards a future. And we cannot cling to hope if you cannot see hope, if you cannot visualize hope. So I have been documenting, just for example, for in the Philippines, what I've been documenting, like for example, slow onset impacts of the climate crisis. This is an aerial photo I took in island in Tictabon City. Sea level rise can actually be seen through the shoreline, of how the shoreline has been getting closer to the houses over the years, over decades. And it just shows you that there's a real threat for island communities who would have to rely on on just staying inland on small islands. And once sea level rise, and though it is a slow onset impact, it will eventually affect the communities. And they will be prone to more storm surge if there's a typhoon. And then another photo, another slow onset impact that's affecting the Philippines is ocean acidification. This is a photo of a seaweed farmer in Tictabon. And with warming seas goes with ocean acidification. The warmer the planet is, the warmer the temperature is, there would be ocean acidification. And that impacts in the level of seaweed farming to communities. So it's just visualizing that it's not just numbers, but it is people, it's livelihood that's going to be affected. And then drought, for example, a photo I took in Mindanao, in Agusan del Sur, of communities are actually being affected during the time that I took this, where there was a long drought in Agusan del Sur, and communities are going to be affected by extreme temperature, and that would be causing longer and longer droughts to communities that are farming. Agriculture again is in Aurora. Changes in temperature, changes in the climate, long term would have a big impact to small scale farmers, those who would have to rely on just plowing the land and providing food for their families. And once you actually see that, you'd understand that the climate crisis isn't just about a large scale issue, but it transcends to families and to households. Fisheries, that the climate crisis in the Philippines affect the fishing condition, like the previous fishing grounds will no longer hold enough fish for communities to harvest. And at the same time, warming seas would affect how how fishes populate. So and again, it would affect communities. It would affect families who rely on fish for food and fish for livelihood. And then again, an example is in seaweed. So in the Philippines, you have our coastal areas are majority are fisher folk. They would have to rely on seaweed and on fishing, and some of them actually do have seaweed farming um, as their source of income. And another issue that's related to the climate crisis is an issue of biodiversity. And the more we're pushing towards it, because forests chase carbon, and that's something that we have to keep intact, because to sequester more carbon, because we want sequester carbon.
Hello, Miss Kathleen. I think you are lagging a bit. I'm not sure if it's just me.
The rest of the environment is affected.
Miss Kathleen, I think you're
Can you still
lagging.
hear me?
Okay, I think it's better now.
All right. Yeah. I think I got cut off it talking about biodiversity.
Yes,
I'll try to
biodiversity.
slow down this speaking. Yeah.
All
So yeah, when we talk about the climate crisis, we have to see it how it's related to biodiversity and ecosystem, of why we're also keeping the forest intact, not just to keep the earth from warming, but because there are plants, there are animals that are actually there in the forest. So and also a part of this is that the reality of large scale dams. This is a photo of the dam in Bulacan, and it only shows when I was working on this story, I didn't know what the dam looks like, but I didn't know that a whole dam would have to be, you have to put water, you have to let the mountains would have to hold the water, and you can see that they flooded the whole mountain just to hold the water. And this coincides with issue of will we create more large scale dams to hold more water to a population, or will we actually keep our forests intact? And keeping our forests intact is of course our first priority. If you want to keep sequestering carbon, and then it also I guess touched on the issue of, because this dam is actually this watershed is actually holding water for a large population, 24/7 running tap water. So it's a question of how do we use water? Do we use water as if water is has an endless supply, or do we see water as something, as a gift, something that is would that is and not infinite. Yeah, and then I did mention about fisheries. And then the climate crisis also impact housing insecurity. In the Philippines, we all know this. We're typhoon prone. How many typhoons passes through the Philippines in a year? And one of the stories I was working on was with in Tumana, and you can actually see that this family lost all of their things during Ondoy, and then Good.
Hello again, Miss Kathleen. I think you're lagging a bit. Yes. So, Miss Kathleen, are you there? Okay, I think she's lagging a bit. So, yes, okay. I think she disconnected for now. So, but yes, I hope everyone is enjoying and really getting to learn a lot. I definitely am learning a lot right now. And yeah, there's a handful of like very inspiring works and narratives that are told through these artworks and photos and video and films. So I myself am a big photography and film fan, so I'm really enjoying seeing all of Miss Kathleen's works. So here, I think she is coming back right now. Okay. Hi, Miss Kathleen. Are you there?
Yeah, I'm here. I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
No
I'll
worries.
cut
No
the
worries.
presentation.
Okay. I think we can't hear her again. Yes, Miss Kathleen.
Yeah, I'm still here.
Oh, there. All
I'll
right.
just cut short my presentation.
Okay. No worries. No worries.
Yeah.
Okay. So, I believe Miss Kathleen is having some connectivity issues, but no worries. We are still I hope you are still all enjoying and enjoying the artworks that we're all seeing and from these different speakers. And if you didn't know, or if you didn't catch it a while ago, Miss Kathleen was actually part of Native Agency's International Environmental Photography Lab in 2021 last year. And she has a selection of her photos that will be exhibited at the Horizonte Zingst 15th Environmental Photo Festival in Germany. Wow. So Filipinas represent. So while we're waiting for Miss Kathleen, Alia, we can give shout outs first to our viewers on Facebook.
Yes, I agree. So, hello to all our viewers. Shout out to Vive de los Santos from Zambales, Ayan Soqueño from Las Piñas City, Iris Algarve from Laguna. We have Carol Napao Confessor from Marinduque, Robert Jason Monreal from Sipocot, Camarines Sur. Then we have Hazy Carino and Franz Evangelista from Gumaok Elementary School. We have Madriaga Erlin Dailisan from Quezon City. We have A.G. Sanya from Quezon City, Loelia Ledres from Valenzuela City, Lorenzo Sablay from Manila, Rochelle Ampoya from Batangas, Gino Dayanan from Digos City in Davao del Sur, and we have Micaela Arcega from Camarines Norte. Thank you guys, and to all the other viewers for staying with us, and I hope that you guys are enjoying all the artwork and learning a lot as well about how arts and humanities also have an important role in climate action. Will
Yes.
Kathleen be continuing her
I think
presentation? Or-
we can get back to Miss Kathleen later. And for now, we can proceed to the open forum. So to our speakers, Alia and I will be reading the questions. from the Facebook comments section. So if it's not directed to a specific speaker, we will open it to everyone and anyone can answer. So paunahan na lang tayo sa pagmain. So Alia, I think you can ask the first question.
All right, so for our first question, the contribution of Working Group 2 to the sixth assessment report of the IPCC will be released sometime next week. How can we more effectively share it to the public, knowing that the report is full of jargons and may not be readily understood by the public, especially since the content of the upcoming report is about impacts, adaptation, and vulnerability, something that is very important to the Philippines. So, who would like to share their
I can
insights on that? Okay, Mitzi, take it away.
Especially with this report of the IPCC special report, it's so important now we focus on the hope, as a lot of our speakers have already mentioned earlier, because it can get really depressing and can trigger so much climate anxiety kasi dinidetail niya talaga isa-isa yung impacts per region, per sector of society, kung sa economy, sa food security, sa sea level rising, and it can get really overwhelming really fast. If you guys want to see a sneak peek of it, na leak na yung report na to last year, try nyo i-google yung leaked report and you can see a little bit of it already, so that in time for the report, kaya nating like sabayan yung mga sinasabi ng report. And I think what's so important is we break down the facts and okay, ito na yung mangyayari. And the leaked reports broke it down properly through through the articles. Because if you really just read the report from freshly, it's so difficult to understand and it's so desensitizing, and you won't alam mo yung malalayo lalo yung climate crisis sa'yo compared to bringing it closer to us. And then when we're illustrating it in art, we have to make sure that we always highlight that strength, the voices of resistance, and the hope, really, because otherwise it'll feel like there's nothing that we can do. And like we've been doing this for so long, and there have been so many reports. This is the sixth report, and still all the reporting is that it's getting worse. And then very important, because in early April, the report that talks about solutions and policies will come out. So more than this one, which talks about impacts, which is so important, I think that report is also so important because it will talk about false solutions like carbon technology and not actually reducing emissions, and escape mechanisms and scapegoats for big corporations and the global north countries. So kailangan yun din yung sabayan natin na hindi enough yung ganon, and yun yung kailangan mapaintindi talaga sa people. And then in September, I think, or October-ish, magkakaroon ng consolidated report yung IPCC report. So pwede ring isang bagsakan na understandable thing. In Yakap, what we're doing is we're already summarizing like the key points from the first report release last November, I think, last year, or basta parang late last year. Then we're gonna create then for February, for this February 28th one, and we're gonna create then for the April one and for the consolidated one. Para mas naiintindihan talaga siya, kasi mahirap talaga siya intindihin. In these cases, this is where the people who have studied, not necessarily professionally or like in universities, pero yung on your own, kung naiintindihan mo siya, come here, come join us, like translate this into something that people can understand. And these impacts, I think, is one of the ones that we can really utilize, because this is the one which will, ito yung mas nagagets ng Pilipino kasi like you could talk about carbon dioxide emissions and sea level rising and ocean acidification, and people will just be like, ano yun, di ba? Unless yung sea level rising, unless sa isla ka na nakatira, pero still mabagal siya. Pero dito makikita mo yung pag-init, mapag-uusapan yung mga bagyo, yun like gets siya ng Filipinos. And as long as we can connect that again to that collective action that we need and the systemic change that we need, and changing this profit-oriented system, then yun na talaga yung way to do it. So we have to like do everything that we can, because it is going to be very overwhelming. Luckily, there are a lot of groups and a lot of people who are already doing this. So if we don't know how to read the report and translate it ourselves, we can get the ones that are already translated into lay terms and then come off from that. Because the more content that there is around the world, the better then. especially if it's contextualized to the Filipino experience, because I think that's something that we lack a lot. There are a lot of reports, but then what does it mean for Filipinos specifically?
Yeah, oh, okay. I'll respond to her first, but Riel can answer after. But yeah, I think it's really important to have that content translated to what's understandable for the Filipino people, and not just the Filipino people, but to everyone, because the climate crisis is something that impacts everyone. So it wouldn't make sense to have this report filled with really important information, but then it's like bombarded with so much jargon and like basically hard to understand, and it's not easily understood by the masses. Yet it's something important to the masses. So we should really emphasize and direct our energy into helping people understand this and grasp the concepts in the IPCC report. So yeah, Riel, you wanted to answer the question as well.
I think Mitzi explained it wonderfully, and if I could add, it also helps to translate the words, kumbaga, simplify the words, the terms, all those technicalities, and translate it into the different languages that the community speak, diba? So mas naintindihan ng mga tao yung mga in a more simpler, more accessible term. And I don't and we shouldn't be limited then to using words. We can even use graphs, illustrations as well to so hindi it's not in for the lack of a better term wordy, pero it's more understandable than how all those graphs Anina used in her presentation. Illustrations really and diagrams really go a long way, especially in publication materials. Yun lang. Thank you.
Thank you. I think we can have like one more person respond to the first question about the IPCC. But if not, then we can move on to the second question.
All right.
No.
Oh, I think
Okay.
Anina wants to
I
share
was
something also.
actually just gonna say that they pretty much covered everything, but basically parang, yeah, you can use art in terms of like coming up with comics. So parang if you can tell the story, that would be more relatable and easier to understand versus handing like a 100-page document. I think parang they would be able to relate more. So I mean, like on Instagram, I've been seeing like a lot of like short comics na parang you don't need to tackle the whole thing at the same time, but it could be like certain like specific targeted topics na you can convert into like yun nga, comics. Kasi pag comics parang mas fun, parang you can even insert humor. But also, I guess, another example lang. So one of my good friends is like a Montessori teacher, and she has been homeschooling her child na, in terms of like, kunyari, meron siyang, one day, I saw her story, she was like, parang may basin lang, and then may ice, and then she just put like parang photos of, kunyari, may polar bear, parang ganun. So, and then pag nagme-melt, parang she was teaching her child about parang, okay, nagme-melt because nag-increase yung temperature. But then it's a fun activity also. So there are so many ways to make this whole document or update more relatable, especially through art. So yun lang.
Thank you so much, Anina. Yeah, that definitely sounds like a lot of fun. And I'm afraid we're running out of time, but I think we can squeeze in one more question that we can that anyone can quickly answer. So just wanted to ask, what are the challenges of using art to communicate climate and environmental related issues?
Okay, I want to say something about this. So
Okay, go ahead, Anina.
So first, I mean, there's an advantage to using art to bridge that gap, like in terms of raising awareness for environmental concerns. But at the same time, it is also a disadvantage sometimes because people now have such like short attention spans. Na parang if you create something visually appealing, they just look at it for a few seconds, parang nice, but they don't really like parang at at a certain point, sometimes it doesn't always stimulate curiosity, like, oh, what's going on here? Ah, she painted sharks. Oh, cute, nice, but they don't really dive deep. So that it's a challenge. But I guess if you're, for example, creating something, you can sort of give a short description in the caption. Because if it's too long, also people don't like really read through it at the same time. So I guess maybe parang this is where like parang yung mga clickbait works at a certain point, although I'm not a fan of those, but you can also use that. So I guess for me that's been a challenge, because sometimes people just look at your art na it's nice, even though you're trying to share a specific targeted message. So yun nga, it's a pro and it's also a con. Like art could be like relatable, but at the same time it could also be parang, okay, it's nice. Nice, but they don't really understand. Like kunwari, what Riel, diba, earlier you said you created the skull with the different elements, and then people said, yung avatar, parang ganun. So parang sometimes it could be misleading because art is always parang subjective. It's up to the interpretation of the viewer. So yeah, it's a challenge, but we all should just face challenges and try to find solutions in our own way. So okay, I think Riel is gonna say something.
Just to add then, really short lang. Art is also open to interpretation. So you have to be really careful with even the most minute of details. You have to consider then kasi you have to be careful then na minsan di mo napansin it's already offensive na pala to a certain group of people, and you have to consider that kasi kung ano yung mga the feelings of the viewers are valid, and you have to consider everything then. So kumbaga, like for example in my works I tend not to use any skin tone kasi I don't want to over-represent one exact tawag doon, ethno-linguistic group or community of people. So ayun, there's also that to consider, the elements that you have to pick properly, so you don't leave out a certain group or you don't offend certain group of people. And yeah, yun.
Yeah, that's a very good point, Riel. And Anina, thank you so much for sharing. But unfortunately, that is all the time we have for our open forum. But thank you to our speakers for providing us your insights on this very timely topic. We will ask our guests for their final messages in a while. But yes, Alia, would you like to go up next?
Okay, so at this point, we would like to announce the winners of our Klimatotohanan challenge from last episode. And a little drum roll, please. Anyway, the winners are Robert Fuentes and Maria Erica Jean Dino. So congratulations, you guys, and the branch will be coordinating with you for your prize. And for this week, our challenge for our viewers is the same as last episode. You can share your climate-related artworks on your Facebook or Instagram pages, and it could be in any form: visual arts, poetry, literary pieces, or even performances. And just remember to make your post public and to tag our official accounts. And after posting, message the Climate Reality Project Philippines' Facebook or Instagram page with a link to your post as a final step para ma-validate namin ang iyong entry. And we will be picking 3 winners who will receive special prizes from us. Meron kaming grow kits and other sustainable products na ipamimigay namin. Winners will be announced during our next Klimatotohanan episode. So if you decide to join, then you better watch the next episode. Kaya naman, after natong episode, mag-post na kayo ng iyong entries.
Yes,
And you can
you
send
can send in, oh sorry, yeah, you can send in as many entries as you can. Aabangan namin ang mga entries niyo. But I wish we had more time, but as moving and powerful our as powerful our discussions are for today, the challenge continues offline. So just like what we said last week, we need to build and foster a stronger transdisciplinary collaboration for climate action. This means we need more youth leaders and artists on board to produce engaging content and materials that educators and activists could wield as tools for pushing climate action at all levels. Kaya naman, to close this episode, we have one last question for our guests. How will you urge the youth to use their creativity for climate action? So let's start with Riel.
Hello. Okay. How will you urge the youth to use their creativity for climate action? Don't limit yourself um to a certain field or something. The boundaries are limitless in art. That's the beauty of art. Even the most beautiful pieces can come from whatever is available in your house. Like, oops, it's blurry. Or like this one. Um, Also, don't be afraid to do your research. Research goes a very, very long way, especially when it comes to the climate crisis. A lot of info is out there. If you're going to create art, don't think of the numbers. Even if you're able to change the mindset of one person, that's already enough. That's kumbaga being viral is just bonus, pero it's not really integral. Every small step goes a long way. And ayun, for everyone then, it helps to do research and of course vote wisely.
Yes, I agree with that. Thank you for your insights and comments, Real, and for being part of this episode. Mitzi, you now have the floor.
I think as Riel mentioned, it's really don't feel pressure to, do anything but what makes you feel happy. The important thing about climate activism is that you start and that you get connected with the community and the collective that can hold you in grief, but also hold you accountable. When the climate activism is already so scary, I feel like it's so important to find that joy and to find that outlet that will bring you joy. And that's why you should use art or whatever form that you can to express your climate activism. And that's also how you get young people to join climate activism, because you're doing something relatable. You're doing something that they know and that they can see themselves doing also. And let's make activism more accessible to people. Na hindi siya always, I hate how sometimes activism is portrayed as, people on the streets lang and doing like speeches, and it seems glamorous or it seems really dangerous, but it's also really mundane. It's also just creating poetry. It's also just talking to your friends. It's also just talking to your family. It's also just creating artwork. And I think the more that we show people that it is something that they can be part of, then the more people can join the movement. And that's what we need, really.
Thank you so much, Mitzi. So, Anina, what about you? Your closing message.
Okay, there. So, I guess to encourage the youth, they should like start creating more pieces that stimulate curiosity. And for example, me or all of us as creatives or as artists, we can show people the beauty of nature, because not everyone has access to like these things, or not everyone, like for example, goes to the beach all of the time or hikes in the mountain. So if you show them the beauty of nature, then it would stimulate their curiosity. They would probably like have an appreciation for it, and they can experience it even virtually. So at least through that methodology, you can encourage them, now look, this is what we're trying to protect, because this is so beautiful, this is very therapeutic, this is healing. then maybe everyone will be encouraged, not just the youth, to save and protect the planet. So there.
Thank you for that,
Anina.
Anina. Okay, yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah, and I think
And yeah,
Kathleen also has her answer here. Go
I
ahead,
can read her
Alia.
answer. So Kathleen just sent her answer on the the chat, and she said, cling on to hope and keep taking photos and videos. And yeah, I love that, and I agree with that. You should
Super
always
agree
document.
also. Yes, and definitely we learned a lot from all of you, and to express our appreciation for giving us your time this afternoon, already evening, we will be gifting each of you with a copy of Harvest Moon: Poems and Stories from the Edge of the Climate Crisis. Wow, that's a really, really great token. So as mentioned earlier, this anthology features over 50 award-winning and emerging writers, photographers, and artists across the world. Who knows, you may find your next inspiration from the stories and visual pieces in this book. I hope that you are able to enjoy the book. Again, thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you to our guests, and also thank you to our viewers on Facebook. We hope to see you again in our upcoming episodes. In the meantime, please do not forget to join our community on all our social media platforms. So that is the Climate Reality Project PH on Instagram, which is at Climate Reality PH, and we are also on Twitter, Climate Real PH. And I'm assuming you guys are on the Facebook already, so yeah. And you can visit the socials of our guests, organizations, and partners with their handles, which are flashed on the screen. So yeah. And a reminder, for your certificate of participation, kindly answer the feedback form, which will be sent in the comment section.
So yes, thank you everyone. This has been Klimatotohanan, a webcast organized and led by climate reality leaders to tackle the urgent climate issues of today and tomorrow. Why Klimatotohanan? Because we need real talk and real action on the climate crisis. Maraming salamat po at magandang gabi sa ating lahat.